$30 for the Barren one. Her father's voice cracked across the square like a whip. Clara hit the wooden platform hard, knees splitting on the rough boards. Her mother's wedding dress, the one she'd been forced to wear, tearing at the seams. Blood ran down her shin. She didn't wipe it, didn't look up, didn't beg. She'd learned begging only made them hit harder. Behind her, somewhere in that silent crowd, her mother watched. Said nothing. Did nothing. This is the story of a woman sold like livestock who found everything she never dared to hope for. Subscribe now. Follow Clara's journey to the end and comment your city so I can see how far her story has traveled. Red Creek, Colorado Territory, Spring 1882. $30 for the Barren one. Clara's face hit the platform. Splinters bit into her cheek. Her father's boot pressed between her shoulder blades, grinding her down into the wood. "Stay down," he hissed. "And smile when they look at you." She tasted blood. Her lip had split against a nail head. The copper tang filled her mouth while the spring sun beat down on her neck, and the crowd shuffled closer, boots scraping against the packed dirt of Red Creek's market square. "That's right, folks," her father's voice boomed above her. "Clara Louise Whitmore, 26 years old. Married 4 years to Henry Crawford of the Missouri Crawfords. Fine family, fine name." He paused. She knew what came next. Returned. The murmur rippled through the crowd like wind through dead grass. Clara pressed her forehead against the wood and counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. "Barren as a salted field," her father continued. 4 years, not one child. The Crawfords tried everything. Doctors, prayers, pilgrimages. Nothing took. He kicked her hip, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to make her flinch. "But she can cook. So, keep her mouth shut. That's worth something to the right buyer." Someone laughed. Clara closed her eyes. Get through this. Just get through this. "I'm asking $30, her father announced. "But I'll take 20 if you haul her out of here tonight. I got no more use for her." $20. 4 years of marriage. 3 miscarriages she'd never told anyone about. 100 nights of Henry's fists. 1,000 prayers that went unanswered. $20. "Let me see your face." The voice came from her left, close. Clara didn't move. A rough hand grabbed her braid and yanked her head up. A man with tobacco-stained teeth and bloodshot eyes leaned in his breath, hot and sour against her skin. "Open your mouth," he said. Clara's jaw locked. "I said open." He squeezed her cheeks, forcing her lips apart. His thumb pushed past her teeth, pressing down on her tongue like she was a horse at auction. "Teeth are good," he announced to no one in particular. "How about the rest of her?" He reached for her collar. Clara bit down. The man screamed. Blood spurted from his thumb. He reeled back, clutching his hand, cursing and spitting. "You little—" His fist came fast. Clara saw it but couldn't dodge. The blow caught her temple and the world went white, then gray. Then she was on her back, staring up at the sky while voices roared around her. "Control your property, Whitmore." "Wild animal." "Teach her a lesson she won't." Her father's face appeared above her purple with rage. "You stupid girl! You stupid, worthless—" He raised his hand. $50. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Everything stopped. Clara blinked. Blood trickled into her eye from a cut on her forehead. Through the red haze, she saw him. He stood at the edge of the crowd, tall, broad, trail dust on his coat and mud caked on his boots. A wide-brimmed hat threw shadows across his face, but she could see his eyes, gray, like storm clouds, like granite, like something old and tired and unbroken. $50, he said again. "Cash, now." Her father's hand lowered slowly. "Mister, I don't know who you are, but this girl I saw what she did." The stranger stepped forward. The crowd parted for him without being asked. "I also saw what he tried to do to her." He stopped at the edge of the platform and looked down at Clara. Not at her torn dress, not at the blood on her face. At her. "Can you stand?" Clara's throat closed. No one had asked her that in years. No one had cared whether she could or couldn't. Her voice cracked. "I think so." "Then stand." It wasn't a command. It was permission. Clara pushed herself up. Her arms shook. Her vision swam, but she stood. The stranger reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. He counted out coins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gold eagles, and set them on the platform at her father's feet. $50, he said. "She's coming with me." Her father's eyes went wide. $50 was more than he'd make in 3 months. More than Clara had ever been worth to him. "Now hold on." The tobacco-stained man pushed forward his injured hand wrapped in a dirty bandana. "I saw her first, and she owes me for this." He held up his bleeding thumb. "I want compensation." The stranger turned. He didn't speak, didn't move. Just looked at the man with those gray eyes, steady and cold, and absolutely still. The tobacco-stained man took a step back, then another. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd without another word. The stranger looked at Clara's father. "We done here." Her father scooped up the coins. "She's yours. No refunds." "Didn't ask for one." Clara stood frozen on the platform. Blood dripped from her chin onto her mother's wedding dress. The dress her mother had forced her to wear this morning, saying, "At least look like you're worth something." Her mother. Clara turned, scanning the crowd. There, at the edge, half hidden behind a dry goods stall. Margaret Whitmore stood with her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders, watching her daughter be sold like livestock. Their eyes met. Clara waited. For a protest, a prayer, a single word. Her mother looked away first. She turned and walked into the crowd, her figure growing smaller and smaller until she disappeared around a corner and was gone. "Ma'am?" Clara turned back. The stranger stood at the edge of the platform, one hand extended toward her. Not grabbing, not demanding, offering. "My wagon's around back," he said. "Long ride ahead. Can you walk?" Clara looked at his hand. Calloused, scarred. A working man's hand. "Who are you?" "Name's Samuel Thornton. Folks call me Sam." He didn't lower his hand. "I got a ranch about 4 hours north, 5 children, no wife." He paused. "I'm not looking for that. I just need help. Someone steady. Someone who won't run." "Why me?" "Because you bit a man who tried to put his hands on you." Something flickered in his eyes. "My wife would have done the same." Clara's chest tightened. "Your wife?" "Passed 3 years back, fever." He said it flat like a fact, but she heard the weight beneath it. "I've been doing what I can with the children. It's not enough." "What makes you think I'll be any better?" "I don't." Sam's hand stayed steady. "But I figure anyone they'd sell in a town square has probably survived worse than 5 kids in a rundown ranch." Clara almost laughed. It came out as a sob instead. She took his hand. The wagon waited behind the blacksmith shop, 2 tired mules and a buckboard with a torn canvas cover. Sam helped her up onto the seat, then handed her a canteen and a clean handkerchief. "For your face," he said. Clara pressed the cloth to her split lip. The bleeding had mostly stopped, but her cheek throbbed where the splinters had dug in. Sam climbed up beside her and took the reins. The mules started forward without being told, like they knew the way home. Red Creek fell away behind them. Clara didn't look back. They rode in silence for nearly an hour. The prairie stretched out endless and gold broken only by the occasional cluster of cottonwoods along a dry creek bed. The sky was so big it made Clara feel like she was drowning in blue. "Your lip needs stitches." She touched the cut. "It'll heal." I've got a needle and thread at the ranch. Abby's good with wounds. She can... Abby, my eldest, 14. Sam kept his eyes on the road. Then there's Tommy. He's 10. Ruth is 11. Grace is 8. And Lily, she's 4. 5 children. Clara tried to picture them. 5 faces, 5 personalities, 5 reasons to run. What happened to their mother? Sam's jaw tightened. Diphtheria. Winter of 79. She was fine on Sunday. Dead by Thursday. His voice stayed flat, but his knuckles went white on the reins. I was in town buying feed when it happened. By the time I got back... He didn't finish. Clara understood. I'm sorry. Don't be. Sam loosened his grip on the reins. Being sorry doesn't change anything. Being useful does. They rode on. The sun climbed higher, then started its slow descent toward the mountains. Clara's dress dried stiff with sweat and blood. Her head ached, her lip throbbed. But she didn't complain. She'd survived worse. There, Sam said. Clara looked up. The ranch sat in a shallow valley protected from the wind by a ring of low hills. A 2-story house with a wraparound porch. A weathered gray barn. A chicken coop. A corral with 3 horses and a mule. And on the porch, 5 figures stood in a row, watching the wagon approach. Sam pulled the mules to a stop and set the brake. He didn't move to get down. They're going to stare, he said quietly. I know. Abby's going to be difficult. She's been running the house since her mother died. She won't want to give that up. I understand. Tommy will test you. He thinks he's the man of the house now. He's not, but he needs to believe it. Okay. Ruth watches everything. She won't say much, but she's keeping score. Grace cries easy and laughs easier. And Lily... He paused. Lily hasn't spoken since her mother died. Clara turned to look at him. Hasn't spoken at all? Not a word. 3 years of silence. Sam's voice cracked just barely. Doctors say there's nothing wrong with her. She just... stopped. Clara thought of her own silences. The nights she'd lain beside Henry Crawford and pretended to be asleep. The days she'd moved through his mother's house like a ghost, speaking only when spoken to. The years she'd swallowed her own voice until she'd almost forgotten she had one. I'll be patient with her, Clara said. Sam nodded. Then he climbed down from the wagon. Clara followed. The children watched her approach. 5 pairs of eyes. 5 different expressions. Abigail tall for 14, dark hair pulled back, tight arms crossed over her chest. She looked at Clara the way a wolf looks at an intruder. Tommy sandy-haired, square-jawed, hands shoved in his pockets. He stood with his feet planted wide like he was ready for a fight. Ruth, thin and pale, clutching a worn book to her chest. She didn't look hostile. She looked curious. That was almost worse. Grace, round-faced and fidgety, bouncing slightly on her heels. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying, but a smile kept tugging at the corners of her mouth. And Lily, tiny, dark-haired, hiding behind Abigail's skirt. She clutched a faceless cloth doll in one hand. Her thumb hovered near her mouth. Her eyes were huge and empty. Sam stepped onto the porch. Everyone, this is Clara. She's going to be staying with us. Silence. Then Abigail spoke. What happened to her face? She got hurt. How? That's her business. If she's staying in our house, it's my business too. Sam's jaw tightened. Clara stepped forward before he could respond. A man in town didn't like being told no, she said. So he hit me. And before that my father pushed me off a platform. And before that my husband used to... She stopped, took a breath. I've been hit a lot, by a lot of people. But I'm still standing, and I'm still here. The children stared at her. Your father sold you, Grace whispered, for $50. That's terrible. Yes, it is. Grace's eyes welled up with tears. Are you sad? Clara considered the question. Sad wasn't the right word. Sad was for people who still had hope. Sad was for people who expected things to be different. "I'm tired," she said finally, "but I'm not giving up." Grace nodded slowly like this made sense to her, but Abigail wasn't satisfied. "Why would Pa buy a stranger? We don't need anyone. We've been doing fine." "Have you?" Clara asked. Abigail's face flushed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I can see the patches on your brother's shirt where someone mended it wrong. I can see the burn marks on your sister's fingers from trying to cook on a stove that's too big for her. I can see the circles under your eyes from staying up late doing the work your mother used to do." Abigail's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You don't know anything about our mother." "No," Clara agreed. "I don't. But I know what it looks like when a child is carrying a weight that's too heavy for them, because I carried it too." The porch went quiet. Then Ruth spoke, her voice soft and precise. "What happened to you before the selling?" Clara looked at the girl with the book. "I got married when I was 18, to a man I didn't choose. I tried to give him children. I couldn't. He blamed me. His family blamed me. When he found a younger wife who could give him what he wanted, they threw me out. My parents took me back, but only so they could sell me to someone else." "That's awful," Ruth said. "Yes." "Did you love him? Your husband?" "No." Clara didn't hesitate. "But I tried to be a good wife anyway. I tried to be enough." She paused. "I learned that trying doesn't always matter. Some people will hurt you no matter what you do." Ruth nodded slowly, like she was filing this information away. Tommy spoke for the first time. "Can you shoot?" Clara blinked. "What?" "A gun. Can you shoot one?" No. I've never held a gun." Tommy snorted. "Then what good are you?" "Tommy." Sam's voice was sharp. "It's a fair question, Pa. If she can't shoot, she can't protect us. And if she can't protect us—" "I can cook," Clara interrupted. "I can clean. I can mend clothes the right way so they don't fall apart. I can read and write and do figures. I can tend a garden. I can birth a calf if I have to. And I can stay up all night with a sick child without complaining." She looked Tommy in the eye. "I might not be able to shoot a gun, but I can do a lot of things that matter." Tommy held her gaze for a long moment. Then he shrugged. "We'll see." He turned and walked into the house. Grace tugged on Clara's hand. "Don't mind Tommy. He's mean to everyone. It's not personal." "I'll remember that." "Are you hungry? I can make you something. I'm not very good at cooking, but I can make toast. Mostly." "Toast sounds wonderful." Grace beamed and ran inside. Ruth followed more slowly, still watching Clara with those measuring eyes. Only Abigail and Lily remained. Abigail hadn't moved. Her arms were still crossed, her jaw still tight. But something in her expression had shifted. Not acceptance, not yet, but something that might someday become it. "I'm not going to call you Ma," she said. "I don't expect you to. I'm not going to pretend you belong here. That's fine. And if you hurt any of them—" Abigail's voice cracked. "If you hurt them, I'll make you wish you'd never been born." Clara didn't flinch. "I believe you." Abigail stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned and walked inside, leaving Clara alone on the porch with Sam and Lily. The little girl hadn't moved. She still clutched her faceless doll, still hid behind where Abigail had been standing. Her eyes, huge and dark, watched Clara like she was something dangerous. Clara crouched down slowly, making herself smaller, less threatening. "Hello, Lily." Nothing. "That's a beautiful doll. Does she have a name?" Lily's fingers tightened on the fabric. "She doesn't have a face," Clara said gently. "I noticed that. Did something happen to it?" Still nothing, but Lily's gaze flickered to the doll, then back to Clara. "My mother gave me a doll once," Clara continued. A long time ago, before things got bad. She had yellow hair made of yarn and a blue dress. She paused. I had to leave her behind when I got married. I never saw her again. Lily's thumb crept toward her mouth. I bet your doll has been through a lot, Clara said. I bet she's seen some hard times. But she's still here, isn't she? Still with you. The tiniest nod, almost imperceptible. That's what matters, Clara said. Not whether she has a face, whether she stays. Lily looked at her for a long moment. Then she turned and walked inside, her small footsteps barely making a sound on the wooden boards. Clara straightened up. Sam stood at the edge of the porch watching her. That's the most she's responded to anyone in months, he said quietly. She's not broken. She's just waiting. For what? For someone who won't leave. Sam's eyes met hers. Something passed between them. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. The look of two people who had learned the hard way that the world didn't owe them anything. The guest room's upstairs, he said. Second door on the left. You can wash up before supper. Thank you. Clara walked toward the door. Then she stopped. Mr. Thornton. Sam. Sam. She turned to face him. Why did you really buy me the truth? Sam was quiet for a moment. His eyes drifted to something beyond her, the horizon maybe, or a memory. 3 years ago, he said finally, I stood at my wife's grave and promised her I'd take care of our children, that I'd find a way to make things right. He paused. I've been failing that promise every day since. The house is falling apart, the kids are hurting, and I'm so tired I can barely see straight. He looked at her then, and she saw it, the exhaustion, the grief, the desperate hope he was trying so hard not to feel. When I saw you on that platform, he said, I didn't see damaged goods. I saw someone who'd been knocked down and was still fighting to get up. Someone who bit a man twice her size because she refused to be treated like property. His voice roughened. I figured if anyone could help me keep my promise, it might be someone like that. Clara's throat tightened. What if I can't? What if I'm not strong enough? Then we'll figure it out together. Sam's voice was steady. But I don't think you're as weak as you believe you are, and I'm willing to bet on that. Clara didn't know what to say. No one had ever bet on her before. No one had ever looked at her and seen something worth saving. She nodded once, not trusting her voice, and walked inside. The house smelled like wood smoke and lye soap and something burning in the kitchen. Clara followed the scent to its source. Grace stood at the stove, desperately trying to scrape charred bread off a cast-iron pan. Smoke billowed around her small figure. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Here. Clara crossed the kitchen and took the pan from her hands. Let me. She carried it to the basin and poured water over it. The sizzle and steam filled the small room. I'm sorry, Grace said, her eyes welling up. I was trying to make toast for you and I forgot to watch it, and it's all right. No, it's not. I ruin everything. Abby always says I shouldn't be allowed in the kitchen because I break things and burn things. And Grace. Clara crouched down to the girl's level. Look at me. Grace looked. I've burned more bread than you can imagine. I've spilled soup and dropped plates and started at least one kitchen fire that nearly burned down a house. Clara smiled. Learning to cook is just learning how to make mistakes without giving up. Grace sniffled. Really? Really? Now do you want to try again? I'll help you this time. A watery smile broke across Grace's face. Okay. They worked together. Clara guiding Grace's hands as she sliced bread, teaching her how to watch for the right moment to flip it, how to test the heat of the pan with a drop of water. By the time they finished, Ruth had appeared in the doorway, still holding her book. She watched them with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. You're good at that, Ruth said. At toast? At teaching. Mama used to teach Grace the same way. Ruth paused. She was patient, too. Clara's heart clenched. Your mother sounds like she was a wonderful woman. She was. Ruth's voice was soft. The best. She turned and left before Clara could respond. Dinner was chaos. The table was too small for 7 people. Tommy elbowed Grace, who spilled milk on Ruth, who snapped at Abigail, who glared at everyone equally. Lily sat at the corner, pushing food around her plate without eating. Sam presided over it all with the weary patience of a man who had given up on order long ago. Clara sat at the end of the table, watching. Learning. Tommy ate like he was afraid someone would take his food away. Grace talked with her mouth full. Ruth read her book between bites. Abigail barely touched her plate, too busy monitoring everyone else. And Lily. Lily sat perfectly still, her eyes on Clara. "All right," Sam said finally. "Dishes. Tommy, you're washing. Grace drying. Abigail." "I know." Abigail pushed back from the table. "I'll put the little ones to bed." She reached for Lily's hand, but Lily pulled away. She slid off her chair and walked around the table to where Clara sat. Everyone froze. Lily looked up at Clara with those huge dark eyes. Then she held out her faceless doll. Clara's breath caught. "You want me to hold her?" Lily nodded. Clara took the doll carefully like it was made of glass. "I'll keep her safe." Lily stared at her for another long moment. Then she turned and walked to Abigail, taking her sister's hand without protest. Abigail looked at Clara. Her expression was unreadable. Then she led Lily upstairs. Sam waited until they were gone. Then he leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "That's the first time she's let anyone touch that doll since Eliza died." Clara looked down at the worn fabric, the empty space where a face should be. Maybe she just needed someone who understood what it feels like to be incomplete. Sam didn't answer. But when Clara looked up, she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Hope. That night, Clara lay in the guest room bed staring at the ceiling. The mattress was thin. The pillow smelled like cedar and dust. Through the window, she could see stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. She held Lily's doll against her chest. Downstairs, she could hear Sam moving around, the creak of floorboards, the clatter of dishes being put away, the low murmur of his voice as he spoke to someone. Himself, maybe. Or the ghost of his wife. Clara closed her eyes. 24 hours ago, she had been lying in her parents' house wondering if she would survive another day. 12 hours ago, she had been sold in a town square like livestock. Now she was here, in a stranger's house, holding a silent girl's faceless doll, surrounded by 5 children who didn't know if they wanted her to stay or go. She should be terrified. She should be planning her escape. But as she lay there in the darkness, listening to this broken house breathe around her, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not safety, not yet, but possibility. And for now, possibility was enough. Morning came with the smell of smoke. Clara's eyes snapped open. She was out of bed and halfway down the stairs before she was fully awake, her feet bare against the cold wood. The kitchen was hazy. Grace stood at the stove, tears streaming down her face, waving a towel at a smoking pan. "I was trying to make breakfast," she sobbed. "I wanted to surprise everyone but the eggs." Clara crossed the room and moved the pan off the heat. "It's okay. We can fix this." "No, we can't. I ruined everything. Again." "Grace." Clara knelt in front of her. "Look at me." The girl looked. "Do you know how many times I failed before I learned to cook? Hundreds, maybe thousands." Clara wiped the tears from Grace's cheeks. "The only difference between someone who can cook and someone who can't is that the person who can kept trying." Grace sniffled. "Promise? Promise." From the doorway, a voice spoke. "She's right." Clara turned. Sam stood there still in his work clothes, hat in hand. Behind him, Tommy and Ruth hovered watching. "Your mother burned plenty of meals when we first got married," Sam said. "She nearly set fire to our first house twice." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But she never gave up, and neither will we." Grace ran to her father and buried her face in his shirt. He wrapped an arm around her, his eyes finding Clara's over the top of his daughter's head. "Thank you," he mouthed. Clara nodded. Then she turned back to the stove and started making breakfast. By noon, Clara had learned the rhythm of the house. Ruth liked to read by the window in the morning when the light was best. Tommy disappeared to the barn as soon as his chores were done, preferring the company of horses to people. Grace followed Clara everywhere, chattering constantly about everything and nothing. Abigail kept her distance, watching from doorways and around corners, cataloging every move Clara made. And Lily. Lily sat on the porch, with her faceless doll staring out at the mountains. Clara brought her lunch: a slice of bread with butter and honey, a cup of milk. Lily didn't look up. Clara sat down beside her, leaving space between them. She didn't speak, didn't try to draw the child out, just sat there sharing the silence. After a while, Lily picked up the bread and took a small bite. Clara smiled to herself and looked out at the mountains. That evening, Abigail cornered her in the kitchen. "What are you doing?" Clara didn't turn from the dishes she was washing. "Cleaning up after dinner." "That's not what I mean." Abigail moved closer. "What are you really doing here? What do you want?" "I want a place to sleep and food to eat, same as anyone." "People don't just show up out of nowhere and start being nice. There's always an angle." Clara set down the dish she was holding and turned to face the girl. "You're right," she said. "People usually do want something. Your father wanted help with his children. I wanted to get away from a family that sold me for $50. She paused. "But here's what I don't want. I don't want to replace your mother. I don't want to pretend I know what I'm doing. And I don't want to fight with you every day." Abigail's eyes narrowed. "Then what do you want?" "I want to be useful, that's all." Clara picked up the dish again. "I've spent my whole life being told I wasn't enough. I'm tired of it. If I can be useful here, if I can help, then maybe that means something. Maybe that proves they were wrong." Abigail was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Mama used to wash the dishes that way too, with the big ones first." Clara looked down at the serving platter in her hands. "It's more efficient," she said. "The big ones take the longest to dry." "That's what Mama said." Silence stretched between them. "I'm not trying to be her," Clara said softly. "I know." Abigail's voice cracked. "That's what makes it worse. If you were trying, I could hate you for it. But you're not. You're just you. Is that bad?" Abigail didn't answer. She turned and walked out of the kitchen, her footsteps fading up the stairs. Clara stood there for a long time, hands in the soapy water, heart heavy in her chest. That night, a storm rolled in from the mountains. Thunder cracked across the sky. Lightning lit up the windows in bursts of white. Rain hammered against the roof like 1,000 fists. Clara lay in bed listening to the chaos, unable to sleep. Then she heard it. A small sound, barely audible beneath the thunder. Crying. She was up and moving before she could think. The sound led her to the children's room, the one Grace and Lily shared. Grace was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, hands clamped over her ears. "I hate storms," she sobbed. "I hate them. I hate them. I hate—" "Shh." Clara sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the girl into her arms. "It's okay. I've got you. The thunder's so loud." "I know, but it can't hurt you. It's just noise." "Mama used to sing when there were storms." Grace hiccuped. "She'd sing and hold us until it was over." Clara's throat tightened. "What did she sing?" "I don't remember. I try to remember, but I can't." "Shh. It's okay. It's okay not to remember." She rocked Grace gently, humming a tune her own mother had sung once long ago before everything went wrong. A simple melody, nothing special. But Grace's sobs quieted. Her breathing steadied. Her grip on Clara's arm loosened. And across the room in the other bed, Lily lay watching with those huge dark eyes. Clara hummed until both girls were asleep. Then she crept back to her room and lay down in the darkness, listening to the storm fade into the distance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new chances to fail. But tonight, just for tonight, she had done something right. And maybe that was enough. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the ground muddy and the air thick with the smell of wet earth. Clara woke before dawn, her body still trained to rise early from years in the Crawford household. She lay still for a moment, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of this new house. The creak of settling wood, the distant crow of a rooster, the soft footsteps of someone already awake downstairs. She dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen. Sam stood at the stove struggling with a coffee pot that seemed determined to defeat him. Grounds spilled across the counter, water dripped onto the floor. He muttered something under his breath that Clara pretended not to hear. "Let me," she said. He stepped back without argument. "Never could get the hang of this thing. Eliza always—" He stopped, swallowed. "She always made the coffee." Clara took the pot from his hands. "Go sit, I'll bring it to you." Sam hesitated like he wasn't used to being told what to do in his own kitchen. Then he nodded and walked to the table, lowering himself into a chair with the weariness of a man who hadn't slept well in years. Clara worked in silence, cleaning up the spilled grounds, measuring fresh ones, setting the water to boil. By the time the coffee was ready, gray light had begun to seep through the windows. She poured 2 cups and set one in front of Sam. "Thank you," he said. "It's just coffee." "No." He wrapped his hands around the cup, but didn't drink. "Thank you for last night. Grace told me you stayed with her during the storm, that you sang to her." Clara sat down across from him. She needed someone. She needed her mother. Sam's voice was rough. "They all do. And I can't—" He broke off, jaw tight. "I don't know how to be what they need. You're their father. That's enough." "Is it?" He looked up, and Clara saw the doubt in his eyes, the fear. "Abby won't talk to me anymore. Tommy's angry all the time. Ruth hides in her books. Grace cries over everything. And Lily—" His voice cracked. "Lily won't even look at me most days, like I remind her of something she's trying to forget." Clara didn't know what to say. She knew about loss, about grief, about the way it could hollow you out until there was nothing left but the shell of who you used to be. But she didn't know how to fix it. She wasn't sure anyone could. "When my husband first started hitting me," she said quietly, "I thought it was my fault. I thought if I could just be better, quieter, smaller, more useful, he would stop." Sam's hands tightened on his cup. "He didn't stop," Clara continued. "He never stopped. Because it was never about what I did or didn't do. It was about him. His anger, his fear, his need to control something." She paused. "Your children aren't pulling away because of something you did wrong. They're pulling away because they don't know how to carry what they're feeling. And neither do you." Sam was silent for a long moment. "Eliza would have known what to do," he said finally. "She always knew." "Maybe. Or maybe she would have been just as lost as you are." Clara met his eyes, his. "Grief doesn't come with instructions. You just have to survive it long enough for it to become something you can live with." Sam held her gaze. Something passed between them, not understanding exactly, but the beginning of it. The recognition that they were both broken in ways that might never fully heal. "How did you survive it?" he asked. "Your husband, your family, everything they did to you." Clara looked down at her coffee. "I don't know if I did. Some days it feels like I'm still in the middle of it, still waiting for someone to hit me, still expecting the worst." She lifted her cup and took a sip. "But I'm still here. That has to count for something." Sam nodded slowly. "It does." They sat in silence as the sun rose higher and the house began to stir around them. The first to appear was Tommy Boots, already on, heading for the back door without a word. Sam called after him. "Breakfast first." "Not hungry." "Tommy." The boy stopped, his back still turned. "What?" Sit down, eat something, then you can go. For a moment, Clara thought Tommy would argue. But something in his father's voice must have reached him because he turned and walked to the table, dropping into a chair with exaggerated reluctance. Clara stood. "I'll make eggs." "You don't have to," Sam started. "I want to." She moved to the stove, grateful for something to do with her hands. Behind her, she could hear Tommy fidgeting, the chair creaking as he shifted his weight. "So," Tommy said, "you're staying." Clara cracked an egg into the pan. "Looks like it." "For how long?" "I don't know." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then, "Pa says you got sold. Like a horse." Clara's hand faltered on the spatula. "That's right." "Did it hurt?" She turned to look at him. He was staring at the table, picking at a splinter in the wood, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. The way he was holding himself still, like he was bracing for something. "Yes," she said. "It hurt." "More than getting hit?" Clara's chest tightened. "Different. Getting hit hurts your body. Getting sold hurts something else, something deeper." Tommy nodded slowly, like this made sense to him. "Ma used to say that words could hurt worse than fists," he said quietly. "I didn't understand what she meant, but I think I do now." Clara turned back to the stove, blinking hard. "Your mother sounds like she was very wise." "She was." Tommy's voice cracked. "She was the best." The eggs finished cooking in silence. Clara divided them onto 2 plates and set one in front of Tommy, one in front of Sam. Then she started cleaning up, giving them space. She heard Tommy mutter something to his father, heard Sam's low response, then the scrape of a chair, the thud of boots, and the back door opening and closing. Sam appeared at her elbow. "He ate everything." "Good." "That's more than he's eaten in days." Sam paused. "What did you say to him?" "The truth." Clara rinsed the pan and set it aside. "He asked if getting sold hurt. I told him yes." Sam was quiet for a moment. "He's been angry since Eliza died. Angry at me, at God, at the whole world. I didn't know how to reach him." "Maybe he doesn't need to be reached. Maybe he just needs to know he's not alone in being angry." Sam looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then he nodded and walked outside to start his chores. Clara watched him go, her hands still wet from the washing. This was not her family. This was not her home. But something was shifting. Slowly. Carefully. Like the first green shoots pushing through frozen ground. She didn't know if it would last. She didn't know if she would stay. But for now, she would keep trying. The morning passed in a blur of small tasks. Clara swept the floors, scrubbed the pots from the night before, mended a tear in one of Grace's dresses. The work was familiar, almost comforting. She had spent years being useful in other people's houses. At least here, no one hit her for doing it wrong. Around midday, Ruth appeared in the kitchen doorway, her book clutched to her chest as always. "Can I ask you something?" Clara set down the dress she was mending. "Of course." Ruth walked closer, her eyes fixed on Clara with that unsettling intensity. "When you were married, did you love your husband?" Clara considered the question. It deserved an honest answer. "No," she said. "I tried to. I wanted to. But love isn't something you can force." "Then why did you marry him?" "Because I didn't have a choice. My father owed his family money. I was the payment." Ruth's brow furrowed. "That's not fair." "No, it's not. Mama and Pa loved each other." Ruth's voice softened. "Really loved each other. You could see it in the way they looked at each other, the way they touched." She paused. "Do you think you could ever love someone like that?" Clara's heart ached. "I don't know. I've never had the chance to find out." Ruth nodded, slowly processing this. Then she asked, "Do you think Pa could love someone again? After Mama?" Clara's breath caught. That's not for me to say. But what do you think? Clara looked at the girl, this quiet, watchful child who saw too much and said too little. I think your father has a lot of love in him, she said carefully. I think he loves you and your brothers and sisters more than anything in the world. But I think he's scared. Scared that loving someone new would mean forgetting your mother. And he would never want to do that. Ruth's eyes glistened. I don't want him to forget her either. He won't. None of you will. Your mother is part of this family, even if she's not here anymore. Loving someone new doesn't erase that. It just means your hearts are big enough to hold more. A tear slipped down Ruth's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, like she was embarrassed. I miss her, she whispered. Every day. I wake up and for a second I forget she's gone. And then I remember, and it's like losing her all over again. Clara opened her arms. Ruth hesitated. Then she stepped forward and let Clara hold her. They stayed like that for a long moment, the girl's thin shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Clara stroked her hair and said nothing because there was nothing to say. Some grief was too big for words. When Ruth finally pulled back, her eyes were red, but her expression was calmer. Thank you, she said. For what? For not telling me it gets better. Everyone says that. But it doesn't feel better. It just feels different. Clara nodded. Different is something. It's not nothing. Ruth almost smiled. Then she walked out of the kitchen, her book still pressed to her chest, and disappeared up the stairs. Clara sat back down and picked up the dress she'd been mending. Her hands were trembling. She had spent years being told she couldn't have children, that she was broken, worthless, barren. But Ruth had come to her, had trusted her with something fragile and precious. Maybe being a mother wasn't about giving birth. Maybe it was about showing up, about being there when someone needed you. Maybe she wasn't as broken as she'd always believed. The afternoon sun had just started its descent when the riders came. Clara was hanging laundry behind the house when she heard the hoofbeats. 2 horses moving fast. She dropped the shirt she was holding and walked around to the front of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. 2 men sat astride matching bay horses. They wore town clothes, clean coats, polished boots, hats that had never seen a day's real work. One was young, maybe 25, with the soft features of someone who had never missed a meal. The other was older, harder, with cold eyes that swept over Clara like she was furniture. Afternoon, the younger one said. This the Thornton place? It is. We're looking for Samuel Thornton. Business matter. Clara's stomach tightened. He's in the barn. I'll fetch him. No need. The older man swung down from his horse. We'll wait. He walked past her like she wasn't there, his eyes scanning the property with the calculating gaze of a man pricing cattle at auction. The younger one followed, tipping his hat to Clara with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Clara found Sam in the barn brushing down one of the horses. There are men here to see you. Sam's hand stilled on the brush. What kind of men? Town men. They said it's a business matter. Sam's jaw tightened. He set down the brush and walked past her, his stride long and tense. Clara followed. The 2 men stood on the porch now, making themselves comfortable like they owned the place. The older one had his hands in his pockets. The younger one was examining the railing, running his finger along the wood like he was checking for dust. Sam stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. Help you, gentlemen. The older man smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Mr. Thornton, my name is Silas Crenshaw. This is my associate, Mr. Polk. We represent the Western Colorado Land Company. Sam didn't react. Never heard of it. We're new to the area. Expanding operations. Crenshaw pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. We've been acquiring properties in this valley. Good grazing land, water access. Your ranch has both. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale, Mr. Thornton. It's just a matter of finding the right price. Sam's eyes hardened. I said it's not for sale. Crenshaw's smile didn't waver. Perhaps you should hear our offer before you... I heard enough. Sam stepped onto the first porch step, putting himself at eye level with Crenshaw. This land belonged to my father. He built this house with his own hands. I was born in the bedroom upstairs. My wife is buried on that hill. He pointed toward the distant ridge, where a small wooden cross was barely visible against the sky. You could offer me $1 million, and I still wouldn't sell. Crenshaw's smile faded. That's unfortunate. For who? For you, Mr. Thornton. Crenshaw refolded the paper and tucked it back into his pocket. We've found that landowners who refuse our initial offers often reconsider, once they've had time to think about the alternatives. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Sam didn't blink. Is that so? It is. Crenshaw tipped his hat. We'll be in touch. He walked down the porch steps and mounted his horse. Polk followed, casting one last look at Clara before climbing into his saddle. They rode away without another word. Sam stood on the porch watching until they disappeared over the ridge. His hands were clenched at his sides, the knuckles white. Who were they? Clara asked. Trouble. What kind of trouble? Sam turned to look at her. His expression was grim. The kind that doesn't go away on its own. He walked back toward the barn without another word. Clara stayed on the porch, staring at the empty road where the riders had vanished. She had escaped one kind of danger only to find herself in the middle of another. That night, dinner was quieter than usual. The children sensed something was wrong. Clara could see it in the way they glanced at their father, the way they picked at their food without really eating. Tommy broke the silence first. Who were those men, Pa? Sam set down his fork. Nobody you need to worry about. They looked like trouble. Tommy, I'm not a kid anymore, Pa. I saw how you looked at them. I saw how they looked at our land. Tommy's jaw was set, his eyes hard. If something's happening, I deserve to know. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. They want to buy the ranch. I told them no. That's the end of it. Is it? Abigail spoke up from her end of the table. Because that man, the older one, he looked at this place like he was already planning what to do with it. He can plan all he wants. This land isn't going anywhere. But what if... Enough. Sam's voice was firm, but not angry. I've handled men like them before. They think they can scare us into selling. They're wrong. The children exchanged glances but didn't argue. After dinner, Clara found Sam on the front porch, staring out at the darkening fields. She stood beside him in silence for a moment, watching the stars begin to appear. You're worried, she said. I'm careful. There's a difference. Is there... Sam turned to look at her. In the dim light, she could see the lines of exhaustion on his face, the weight of responsibility he carried every day. Eliza and I built this place from nothing, he said quietly. We cleared the land, dug the well, raised the walls. She planted that garden by the kitchen window. He pointed to a patch of dark earth barely visible in the fading light. Said she wanted to see something growing every morning when she woke up. Clara's heart ached. It's a good piece of land. It's more than land. It's everything, every memory, every moment. It's all tied up in this place. He paused. I can't lose it. I won't. You won't, Clara said. Not without a fight. Sam looked at her. You don't even know what you'd be fighting for. I know what it feels like to lose everything. To have people take things from you because they can. Clara met his eyes. I know what it's like to be powerless. And I know I never want to feel that way again. Something shifted in Sam's expression. Something softened. You're stronger than you look, he said. I had to be. They stood together in the darkness, watching the stars wheel overhead. Thank you, Sam said finally. For what? For being here. For trying. He paused. For not running. Clara almost smiled. Where would I go? Anywhere. Somewhere easier. Easier doesn't mean better. Clara turned to face him. I spent my whole life looking for easier. Looking for someone to save me. It never worked. The only person who can save you is yourself. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a promise of anything more. It was just human contact, warm and steady and real. Clara didn't pull away. They stood like that for a while, two damaged people holding on to each other in the dark. Then Sam released her hand and stepped back. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. They're all long days. Yeah. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. They are. He walked inside, leaving Clara alone on the porch. She stayed there for a long time, listening to the night sounds, feeling the cool breeze on her skin. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if those men would come back. She didn't know if she would ever truly belong here. But she knew one thing. She wasn't going to run. Not this time. The next morning started like any other. Clara woke before Dawn made coffee started breakfast. The children trickled downstairs one by one. Grace first, then Ruth, then a sullen Tommy, who grabbed a biscuit and headed for the barn without a word. Abigail was last as always. She stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Clara work. You're still here. Clara didn't look up from the eggs she was frying. Did you expect me to leave? Most people would have. After those men came yesterday. Abigail walked closer. Pa's been threatened before. By drought. By sickness. By people who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. They always leave eventually. The threats. The helpers. Abigail's voice was flat. After Mama died, Pa hired 3 different women to help with us. They all left. The first one lasted 2 weeks. The second one made it a month. The third one didn't even unpack her bags. Clara finally turned to look at her. Why did they leave? Because it's hard. Because we're difficult. Because... Abigail's voice cracked. Because we weren't worth staying for. Clara set down the spatula and faced the girl fully. Listen to me, she said. I've been beaten. I've been starved. I've been sold in a public square like livestock. I've had people tell me I was worthless every day for years. She stepped closer. You think you can scare me away? You think a few hard days are going to make me run? Abigail's chin trembled. You don't know. I know plenty. I know you're 14 years old and you've been trying to hold this family together since you were 11. I know you're exhausted and scared and angry at the world for taking your mother away. I know you don't trust me, and I don't blame you for it. Clara reached out and took Abigail's hand. But I'm not going anywhere. Not because I have to stay. Because I choose to. Abigail stared at her. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. Why? She whispered. Why would you choose this? Clara squeezed her hand. Because you're worth it. All of you. Even when you're difficult. Even when it's hard. Abigail's composure cracked. A sob escaped her, raw and broken, and full of years of suppressed grief. Clara pulled her close and held her while she cried. They stayed like that for a long time, the eggs forgotten on the stove, the morning light growing brighter around them. When Abigail finally pulled back, her face was red and swollen, but something in her eyes had changed. I'm sorry, she said, for being so... Don't apologize for protecting yourself. That's what survivors do. Abigail wiped her face with the back of her hand. You really think we're survivors? Clara smiled. I know we are. Abigail nodded slowly. Then she turned and walked toward the stairs. At the doorway she stopped. Clara! Yes. The eggs are burning. Clara spun around. Smoke was rising from the pan, the eggs charred black on the bottom. Oh no! Behind her, Abigail laughed. It was a small sound rusty from disuse, but it was real. Clara scraped the ruined eggs into the slop bucket and started over. But she was smiling too. That afternoon, Clara was in the garden when she heard it. A small voice. So quiet she almost missed it. "Flower." Clara's hands froze in the dirt. She turned slowly. Lily stood at the edge of the garden, her faceless doll clutched to her chest. She was pointing at a cluster of wildflowers that had pushed up through the soil, purple and yellow and stubborn against the spring wind. "Flower," Lily said again. Clara's heart stopped. "Yes?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart. That's a flower." Lily looked at her, those huge dark eyes so full of things she couldn't say. Then she spoke again. "Pretty." Clara's vision blurred with tears. She opened her arms. Lily walked forward slowly, carefully, like she was approaching something wild. Then she climbed into Clara's lap and pressed her face against Clara's shoulder. Clara held her tight. The small body was warm and trembling slightly, like a bird that had finally found a safe place to land. "Pretty," Lily whispered again. "Yes," Clara said, her voice breaking. "You're pretty too." They sat there in the garden, surrounded by flowers and dirt and spring sunshine. And for the first time in 3 years, Lily Thornton spoke. When Sam came in from the fields that evening, Grace met him at the door, bouncing with barely contained excitement. "Pa, you have to come see. What is it? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Something's right." Grace grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the kitchen. "Come on." Sam followed, bewildered, as Grace dragged him through the house to the back door. Clara stood in the garden with Lily in her arms. The little girl's face was pressed against Clara's neck, but when she heard her father's boots on the porch, she lifted her head. "Pa," she said. Sam froze. "Pa," Lily said again. "Flower." Sam made a sound half sob, half laugh, and crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. He gathered both Clara and Lily into his arms, holding them so tight Clara could barely breathe. "She spoke," he said, his voice cracked and raw. "She spoke." "She did." What did you—" "I didn't do anything." Clara shifted Lily in her arms. She was ready. She just needed to know it was safe. Sam pulled back, his eyes wet, his face transformed. He looked younger somehow, lighter, like a weight he'd been carrying for years had suddenly lifted. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you." Clara shook her head. "Don't thank me. Thank her. She's the brave one." Sam looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and smiled. "Yeah," he said softly. "She is." That night, after the children were in bed, Sam found Clara on the porch again. She had made it her place, this wooden stretch overlooking the dark fields. It was where she came to think, to breathe, to remember that she was still alive. Sam sat down beside her. "I've been thinking," he said. "About what?" "About what you said, about choosing to stay." He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't choose Eliza. Not really. Our families arranged the match when we were young. I was 17. She was 15. Clara waited, but I fell in love with her anyway. Somewhere along the way, the arrangement became something real." Sam's voice was soft. "She used to say that love wasn't about finding the right person. It was about becoming the right person for someone else." Clara's throat tightened. "She sounds wise." She was. Wiser than me anyway. Sam turned to look at her. "I don't know what's happening here. Between us. I don't know if it's gratitude or convenience or something else." Clara's heart beat faster. "Neither do I. But I know I don't want you to leave." Sam's eyes held hers. "And not just because of the children. Because of you." Clara didn't know what to say. Words felt too small for what she was feeling. "I'm not asking for anything," Sam continued. "I'm not expecting anything. I just wanted you to know." Clara reached out and took his hand the same way she had the night before. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Sam's fingers tightened around hers. They sat together in the darkness, two people who had lost everything slowly finding something new. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was the beginning of it. 2 weeks passed and the Thornton Ranch began to feel less like a stranger's house and more like something Clara couldn't quite name. Not home, she wasn't ready for that word yet, but something close, something fragile and growing. Lily spoke more each day. Small words at first, flowerbird cookie paw, then longer phrases that made everyone stop and listen like they were hearing music after years of silence. Grace taught her to say butterfly, and clapped so hard when she managed it that Lily laughed. A real laugh. The sound of it made Sam turn away and wipe his eyes when he thought no one was looking. Ruth started leaving her book behind, sometimes choosing instead to sit beside Clara in the kitchen and ask questions. About cooking, about sewing, about what it was like to grow up in Missouri. Clara answered everything honestly, even the hard parts. And Ruth listened with that quiet intensity that reminded Clara of a scholar studying for an exam she desperately wanted to pass. Tommy remained difficult, but his edges had softened. He still disappeared to the barn, most mornings still spoke in grunts more often than words, but he had started bringing Clara small things, a perfect egg from the henhouse, a wildflower he claimed he'd found by accident, a piece of wood he was learning to carve. He never said why. He didn't have to. And Abigail had stopped watching Clara like she was waiting for her to fail. Instead, she had started watching her like she was trying to understand something. Like Clara was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve but wanted to. It was good. Better than good. It was the closest thing to peace Clara had known in years. Which was why, of course, it couldn't last. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Sam had gone into town for supplies, taking Tommy with him. Clara was in the kitchen with Abigail, teaching her how to make the buttermilk biscuits that Grace had been begging for all week. Ruth was reading by the window. Grace and Lily were outside chasing chickens and shrieking with laughter. The knock at the door came just after noon. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and walked to answer it, expecting a neighbor maybe, or one of the ranchers Sam had mentioned lived over the ridge. It wasn't a neighbor. The woman standing on the porch was perhaps 50, dressed in black silk that had no business being anywhere near a working ranch. Her hair was silver-streaked and pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face. Her eyes were pale blue and cold as winter sky. Beside her stood a younger woman, 19 maybe 20, with a round face and a swollen belly that pushed against the fabric of her traveling dress. Clara's blood turned to ice. "Well," the older woman said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "So this is where you ended up." Clara couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Aren't you going to invite us in?" The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "After all, we've come such a long way. Who are you?" The voice came from behind Clara. Abigail had appeared in the hallway, her flour-dusted hands clenched at her sides. The older woman's smile widened. "I'm Eugenia Crawford. This is my daughter-in-law, Violet." She gestured to the pregnant young woman. "And that," she pointed at Clara with one gloved finger, "is my former daughter-in-law, the one who couldn't give my son what he needed." Clara found her voice. "Get off this property." "Is that any way to greet family? You're not my family. You never were." Eugenia's smile didn't falter. "Perhaps not. But I am the grandmother of any children you might claim to have. And I've heard some interesting rumors about this place, about a barren woman playing mother to a widower's brood." Clara's hands shook. "What do you want?" "Just to see how you're getting on." Eugenia looked past her into the house, taking in the worn furniture, the simple decorations, the lack of anything expensive or fine. "My goodness, you've certainly come down in the world, haven't you? I'd rather live in a shack than spend another day in your house." Eugenia's expression hardened. "Careful, girl. You may have found some fool willing to take you in, but that doesn't change what you are. Damaged goods. A barren field that no amount of planting will ever make fertile. That's enough. Ruth had appeared beside Abigail, her book forgotten, her face pale with anger. "Who are you to talk to her like that?" Ruth demanded. "You don't know anything about her." Eugenia raised an eyebrow. "And who might you be?" "I'm Ruth Thornton. This is our home, and you're not welcome here." Violet spoke for the first time, her voice high and petulant. "You see, Mother Crawford, I told you this would be a waste of time. She's already poisoned them against us." "I haven't said a word about you," Clara said. "I didn't need to." Eugenia's smile returned sharper now. "Well, I can see we've interrupted something. We'll be staying in town for a few days, at the hotel. Perhaps we can have a more civilized conversation later." She turned to go, then paused. "Oh, and Clara, I wouldn't get too comfortable here. The Crawford family has a long memory, and we always collect what we're owed." She walked down the porch steps, Violet trailing behind her. A hired carriage waited at the end of the path. They climbed in without looking back. Clara stood frozen in the doorway until the carriage disappeared over the ridge. Then her knees gave out. Abigail caught her before she hit the floor. "Clara, Clara, I'm fine." Clara's voice came out strangled. "I'm fine. I just need—" "You're shaking." I know. Just give me a minute." Abigail helped her to a chair. Ruth brought water. Grace and Lily appeared in the doorway, their laughter dying as they saw Clara's face. "What happened?" Grace asked. "Who were those people?" Clara couldn't answer. The room was spinning. Her chest felt tight, like someone was pressing down on her ribs. "Grace, take Lily outside," Abigail said. Her voice was calm, but firm, the voice of someone used to taking charge in a crisis. "But now." Grace obeyed, leading Lily out the back door, with worried glances over her shoulder. Ruth knelt beside Clara's chair. "Who were they? Really?" Clara closed her eyes. "My husband's family. His mother. His new wife. The ones who threw you out." "Yes." Ruth's jaw tightened. "What do they want?" "I don't know." Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "To hurt me. To remind me what I am. To make sure I never forget." "Forget what?" "That I don't deserve this. Any of this." Clara's eyes opened, and they were bright with tears she refused to let fall. "That I'm not good enough. That I'll never be good enough." Abigail crouched down in front of her, forcing Clara to meet her eyes. "Listen to me," Abigail said. "I don't care what those women said. I don't care what they think. You've been here less than a month, and you've done more for this family than anyone else has in 3 years. Abigail." "No, let me finish." Abigail's voice cracked, but she kept going. "You made Lily talk. You made Grace laugh without crying. You made Ruth put down her book. You made Tommy bring you flowers, even though he'll never admit it." She swallowed hard. "You made me believe that maybe things could be okay again." Clara stared at her. "You are not what they say you are," Abigail said fiercely. "Do you hear me? You're not." Clara's composure broke. The tears she'd been holding back spilled down her cheeks. Abigail pulled her into a hug, awkward and unpracticed but fierce. "Thank you," Clara whispered. "Don't thank me. Just don't leave." "I won't." "Promise." Clara held her tighter. "I promise." Sam returned an hour later to find Clara in the kitchen mechanically kneading bread dough, her face blotchy and her eyes red. He knew immediately that something was wrong. "What happened?" Clara didn't stop kneading. "We had visitors." "Who?" "My mother-in-law, former mother-in-law." Clara's hands pressed harder into the dough. "And my husband's new wife." Sam went still. "What did they want?" "To remind me of my place." Clara's voice was flat. "To make sure I knew I hadn't escaped. That I'll never escape." Sam walked to her and gently took her hands, stopping their frantic motion. "Look at me." Clara looked. You are not theirs anymore, Sam said. You're not property. You're not a thing to be owned or traded or thrown away. She said the Crawford family always collects what they're owed. She can say whatever she wants. She has no power here. You don't know her. You don't know what she's capable of. Sam's jaw tightened. Then tell me. Clara pulled her hands away and wrapped her arms around herself. After Henry threw me out, I had nowhere to go. My parents took me back, but only because they hoped to sell me again. Someone with money. Someone who wouldn't care about my condition. Your condition? Clara laughed bitterly. I'm barren, remember. Can't give anyone children. That's all I was ever worth to any of them. A broodmare who couldn't breed. Clara. Eugenia made sure everyone knew. She told every family in Missouri, every potential suitor, every matchmaker. She spread rumors about me that I was cursed, that I was unclean, that any man who touched me would be struck barren himself. Clara's voice shook. She destroyed me, and she enjoyed it. Sam's hands clenched into fists. She won't touch you here. You can't promise that. I can. He stepped closer. I can, and I will. This is my land, my home, and you're under my protection now. Clara looked up at him. Why? Why would you fight for me? Because you're worth fighting for. The words hung in the air between them. Clara's breath caught. Sam, I mean it. Sam's voice was rough with emotion. I don't care what they say about you. I don't care what you can or can't give. You've given my children something I couldn't give them. You've given them hope. That's not. And you've given me something too. Sam reached out and touched her face, his calloused thumb brushing her cheek. Something I didn't think I'd ever feel again. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. What? Sam didn't answer with words. He kissed her. It was gentle, careful, like he was asking permission with every movement. Clara froze for one heartbeat. Then she kissed him back. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. I'm sorry, Sam said. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. Clara's voice was shaky but certain. Don't ever apologize for that. Sam's eyes searched hers. Are you sure? No. Clara almost laughed. I'm not sure of anything, but I know I don't want you to stop. Sam smiled a real smile, the first one she'd ever seen, that reached his eyes. Then I won't. The trouble came 3 nights later. Clara woke to the smell of smoke. She was out of bed and running before she was fully conscious, her bare feet slapping against the wooden floor. The hallway was dark, but through the window she could see an orange glow coming from somewhere outside. The barn. She threw open the front door and stopped cold. Flames were consuming the barn, licking up the walls, devouring the hay and the wood and everything inside. The horses screamed in terror. The smoke billowed thick and black against the night sky, and standing at the edge of the firelight watching it burn was a figure in a dark coat. Silas Crenshaw. He saw Clara and tipped his hat, a smile playing at his lips. Then he turned and walked into the darkness, vanishing like he'd never been there at all. Pa! Tommy's voice split the night. Pa, the barn! Sam burst out of the house, pulling on his boots as he ran. Get the horses out, Tommy, the well water now. Everything became chaos. Clara ran toward the barn without thinking. The heat hit her like a wall, but she pushed through, grabbing the bridle of the first horse she could reach and dragging it toward the door. The animal was wild with fear, rearing and kicking, but she held on. Easy, easy, come on. She got the horse outside and went back for another, then another. Her lungs burned from the smoke, her skin blistered from the heat, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. By the time they got the last horse out, the barn was beyond saving. They stood in a line, Sam, Clara, Tommy, Abigail, Ruth, passing buckets of water, hand over hand, trying to keep the flames from spreading to the house. Grace stood on the porch with Lily, both girls crying, holding each other tight. It took hours to put out the fire. When it was finally over, the barn was nothing but smoking ruins. The smell of burned wood and charred hay hung thick in the air. Sam stood at the edge of the destruction, his face black with soot, his hands raw from the bucket handles. Clara walked to him. "Crenshaw," she said. "I saw him. He was watching it burn." Sam's jaw tightened. "I know. He did this because you wouldn't sell." "I know." Clara touched his arm. "Sam, maybe we should—" "No." The word came out hard and sharp. "I'm not selling. I'm not running. This is my land, my home. If he wants it, he'll have to take it from my dead hands." "Sam?" "I mean it, Clara." He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not fear, not despair. Fury. "He can burn my barn. He can kill my livestock. He can do whatever he wants. But I will not let him win." Clara looked at the ruins of the barn, at the traumatized horses, at the children huddled on the porch, their faces streaked with tears and soot. She thought about running, about leaving, about finding somewhere safer, somewhere easier. Then she thought about what Eugenia had said, about always collecting what she was owed. If Clara ran now, she would be running forever. "Then we fight," she said. Sam looked at her. I told you I'm not leaving." Clara's voice was steady. "I meant it." Sam reached out and took her hand. His grip was tight, almost painful, but she didn't pull away. "Together," he said. "Together." They stood in front of the burned barn, holding hands, watching the smoke rise into the night sky. It wasn't a promise, it wasn't a plan, but it was a choice. And for the first time in her life, Clara had made it herself. The next morning, the children gathered in the kitchen, while Sam laid out the situation in plain terms. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to protect them from the truth. "The men who came before the ones who wanted to buy our land, they burned the barn. They're going to keep pushing until we either sell or leave." "So what do we do?" Tommy asked. "We rebuild. We stand our ground. And we don't let them scare us." "What if they come back?" Grace's voice was small and frightened. "What if they burn the house next?" Sam knelt down in front of her. "I won't let that happen." "But what if you can't stop them?" Clara stepped forward. "Then we stop them together. All of us." Grace looked up at her. "How?" "By being stronger than they think we are. By refusing to give up." Clara looked around the room at each of the children in turn. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But fear doesn't have to mean running. It can mean fighting. It can mean standing up for what matters." Abigail spoke quietly. "What if we lose?" Clara met her eyes. "Then we lose together. But we won't go down without trying." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Lily, little Lily, who had been silent for 3 years, spoke up. "I want to stay." Everyone turned to look at her. "Home," Lily said. Her voice was small but clear. "This is home." Sam's eyes glistened. He pulled Lily into his arms and held her tight. "That's right, sweetheart," he said, his voice rough. "This is home, and we're going to protect it." Tommy stood up, his jaw set. "Tell me what to do." Sam looked at his son, at all his children, at Clara. "We start rebuilding today," he said, "and we don't stop until it's done." They worked through the morning, clearing debris from the burned barn, salvaging what they could, making plans for reconstruction. Neighbors arrived, the ones Sam had mentioned, the families from over the ridge, bringing tools and supplies, and the quiet solidarity of people who understood what it meant to fight for your land. By noon, the framework for a new barn was already taking shape. Clara worked alongside the others. Her hands blistered and her back aching, but she didn't complain. She was part of this now, part of them. That afternoon, while the men raised the walls and the women prepared food for the workers, Clara slipped away to the small hill where Eliza Thornton was buried. The grave was simple, a wooden cross with her name carved into it, A small fence to keep the animals out, wildflowers growing around the base. Clara knelt in the dirt. "I don't know if you can hear me," she said quietly. "I don't know if you're watching. But I wanted you to know I'm not trying to replace you. I could never replace you." The wind stirred the wildflowers. "Your children are amazing, all of them. They're strong and brave and so full of love even when they're hurting." Clara's voice cracked. "And Sam is—" She stopped, swallowed. "I think I'm falling in love with him," she whispered. "And I don't know if that's okay. I don't know if you'd hate me for it or understand." The wildflowers swayed gently. "I just wanted you to know that I'll take care of them, as best I can, for as long as they'll let me." Clara wiped her eyes. "I promise." She stayed there for a while longer, saying nothing, just sitting with the silence. Then she stood, brushed the dirt from her dress, and walked back to join the others. There was work to be done, and she wasn't going to let them do it alone. The new barn rose from the ashes in 3 weeks. Neighbors came from miles around, families Clara had never met. Men who shook Sam's hand and rolled up their sleeves without being asked. Women who brought casseroles and cornbread and sat with the children while their husbands worked. By the time the last nail was hammered and the last board was set, Clara understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't just Sam's fight, it was everyone's. Crenshaw and his men hadn't returned since the fire. The silence should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like the stillness before a storm, the kind that made horses nervous and dogs whine at nothing. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. She was right. The summons arrived on a Friday morning, carried by a nervous young deputy who couldn't meet Sam's eyes. "Mr. Thornton, ma'am." He handed over a folded paper. "You're required to appear before Judge Harrison on Monday. Something about a property dispute." Sam's face went hard. "Property dispute. This land has been in my family for 30 years. "I'm just delivering the paper, sir. I don't know the details." Clara watched the deputy ride away, her stomach churning with dread. Sam unfolded the summons and read it in silence. His jaw tightened with every line. "What does it say?" Clara asked. "Crenshaw's filed a claim. Says he purchased this land from the previous owner before my father ever staked it." Sam crumpled the paper in his fist. "It's a lie. My father was the first to settle here. There was no previous owner. Can he prove his claim?" "He doesn't have to. Not really." Sam's voice was bitter. "Judge Harrison is in Crenshaw's pocket. Everyone in town knows it. If this goes to court, we'll lose." Clara's heart sank. "There has to be something we can do." "I don't know what. I have the original deed, but Crenshaw will have documents too, forged, probably, but official-looking enough to fool a crooked judge." Sam threw the crumpled paper onto the table. "He's been planning this for months. The offer to buy was just the first move. When I refused, he burned the barn to scare me. Now he's going for the killing blow. We can't just give up." "I'm not giving up." Sam turned to face her, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of fighting alone for so long. "But I don't know how to win this one, Clara. I don't have money for lawyers. I don't have connections. All I have is this land and my word, and neither of those means much to a judge who's already been paid." Clara reached out and took his hand. "Then we find another way." What other way? She didn't have an answer, not yet, but she would find one. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat at the kitchen table with a candle burning low. She had spread out every document. Sam had the original deed letters from his father, records of every improvement made to the land over 30 years. There had to be something. Some detail Crenshaw had overlooked. Some piece of evidence that couldn't be dismissed or forged. She was still searching when Abigail appeared in the doorway. "You should be in bed," Clara said. "So should you." Abigail walked closer and looked at the papers scattered across the table. "What are you doing?" "Looking for a way to save our home." Abigail sat down across from her. "Can I help?" Clara hesitated. Then she pushed a stack of letters toward the girl. Look for anything that mentions the land. How it was acquired. Who owned it before. They worked in silence for nearly an hour. The candle burned lower. The house creaked and settled around them. Clara. What was it like being married to someone who hurt you? Clara's hands stilled on the paper she was holding. Why do you ask? Abigail's voice faltered. I keep thinking about what those women said. Your mother-in-law. The things she called you. She looked up, her eyes fierce. How did you survive it? Clara set down the paper and met the girl's gaze. I didn't. Not really. Not for a long time. What do you mean? I mean I stopped being myself. I became what they wanted me to be. Quiet, obedient, invisible. I thought if I made myself small enough, they wouldn't notice me. They wouldn't hurt me. Did it work? No. Clara's voice was soft. It never works. People who want to hurt you will find a way no matter how small you make yourself. All you do is lose pieces of who you are until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person looking back. Abigail was quiet for a long moment. How did you find yourself again? Clara smiled, though it hurt. I'm still looking. But being here with your father, with you and your brothers and sisters, it's helping. She reached across the table and took Abigail's hand. You're helping. Abigail's eyes glistened. I don't want to be like them. The people who hurt you. You won't be. How do you know? Because you're asking the question. Clara squeezed her hand. People who hurt others don't wonder if they're doing wrong. They just do it. The fact that you're worried about becoming cruel means you never will. Abigail nodded slowly. Then she pulled her hand away and picked up another letter. We should keep looking, she said. Yes, we should. They worked until the candle guttered and died. They found nothing, but they kept looking anyway. The confrontation Clara had been dreading came 2 days before the court date. She was hanging laundry behind the house when she heard the carriage. By the time she walked around to the front, Eugenia Crawford was already stepping onto the porch, Violet trailing behind her like a shadow. There you are. Eugenia's smile was sharp as a blade. I was hoping we could talk. We have nothing to talk about. Oh, but we do. Eugenia walked closer, her heels clicking against the wooden boards. I've heard about your little legal troubles. Such a shame. This is a lovely piece of land. Clara's hands clenched at her sides. What do you want, Eugenia? Straight to business. I always appreciated that about you. Eugenia's smile didn't waver. I want you to leave, tonight. Pack your things and disappear. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll make sure you regret it. Eugenia's voice dropped, losing its false sweetness. I have friends in this territory, Clara. Important friends. The kind who can make life very difficult for a woman with no family, no money, and no reputation. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. Eugenia stepped closer. Do you think that rancher will keep you once he knows the truth? Once he knows what you really are? Clara's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? The miscarriages, dear. Eugenia's eyes glittered with malice. 3 of them weren't there. 3 babies you couldn't carry to term. 3 chances you threw away. Clara couldn't breathe. How did you? Henry told me, before he died. Eugenia's voice was almost gentle now, which made it worse. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think your dirty little secret would stay buried? Henry's dead. Fever, last winter. Eugenia didn't seem bothered by the loss of her son. But before he went, he told me everything. About the pregnancies. About how you hid them. About how you let them die. I didn't let them die. Clara's voice cracked. I wanted those babies more than anything. I prayed every night. I did everything right. But they... Her throat closed. They wouldn't stay. Wouldn't stay, or you wouldn't let them. Eugenia shook her head. It doesn't matter what the truth is. What matters is what people believe. And I can make them believe anything I want. Clara felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. All those years of silence, all those nights she'd spent alone bleeding, grieving babies no one knew about. The secret she'd carried like a stone in her chest. And now, Eugenia was going to use it as a weapon. Leave this place, Eugenia said. Tonight. And I'll keep your secret. Your rancher will never know. His children will never know. You can disappear somewhere new and start over. And if I don't, then I'll destroy you. Eugenia's smile returned. I'll tell everyone what you did. I'll make sure no one in this territory will hire you, house you, or even look at you. You'll be alone, Clara. Completely and utterly alone. Clara stood frozen, her mind racing. She could run. She could disappear. She could spare Sam and the children the scandal that would follow if Eugenia told her lies. Or she could stay and fight. No. Eugenia's eyebrows rose. No. I'm not leaving. Clara's voice was stronger now. I'm not running. I've spent my whole life running from people like you, and it never made anything better. It just gave you power over me. You don't know what you're doing. Yes, I do. Clara stepped forward, closing the distance between them. I'm choosing to stand my ground. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing to fight. Eugenia's face twisted with rage. You'll regret this. Maybe. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. Eugenia stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back to the carriage, her spine rigid with fury. This isn't over, she called over her shoulder. No, Clara agreed. It's not. She watched the carriage disappear down the road. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. But she didn't feel afraid anymore. She felt free. That night, Clara told Sam everything. They sat on the porch, the stars scattered overhead, the children long asleep. She told him about the miscarriages, all three of them. The hope and the grief, and the secret shame she'd carried for years. She told him about hiding the blood-soaked sheets, about burying tiny bodies in unmarked graves, about praying to a God who never seemed to answer. Sam listened without interrupting. His face was unreadable in the darkness. When she finished, the silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Say something, Clara whispered. Sam was quiet for another moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. I'm sorry. Clara blinked. You're sorry. For what you went through. For carrying that alone. His grip tightened. For anyone who ever made you feel like it was your fault. You don't, Clara's voice broke. You don't think less of me. Less of you. Sam turned to face her. Clara, you lost 3 children, 3 babies you wanted and loved. And you've been carrying that grief alone for years while people called you barren and worthless and blamed you for something you couldn't control. But I couldn't. It doesn't matter. Sam's voice was fierce. Do you hear me? It doesn't matter whether you can have children or not. That's not what makes you valuable. That's not what makes you worthy of love. Clara couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face. My wife gave me 5 children, Sam continued, and I loved her with everything I had. But I didn't love her because she could bear children. I loved her because of who she was, because of how she made me feel, because being with her made me a better man. He reached up and cupped Clara's face in his hands. You make me a better man too, he said. You make my children happy. You make this house feel like a home again. And none of that has anything to do with whether you can have babies. Clara closed her eyes. I was so afraid to tell you. I know. I thought you would send me away. Never. Sam kissed her forehead. Do you hear me? Never. Clara leaned into him, letting the tears come, letting go of the weight she'd been carrying for so long. For the first time in years, she felt whole. The court date arrived. Sam dressed in his best clothes, clean pants, a pressed shirt, his father's old coat. Clara helped him with his collar, her hands steady even though her heart was racing. "Whatever happens today," she said, "we face it together." Sam nodded. Together. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the case, and half the territory seemed to have shown up to watch. Crenshaw sat at the front, smug and confident, his lawyers beside him in expensive suits. Judge Harrison took his seat, his face already set in the bored expression of a man who had decided the verdict before hearing a single word. The proceedings began. Crenshaw's lawyers presented their case, a tale of forged documents and false testimony, claiming that the land had been purchased decades ago by a company that no longer existed, and that Sam's father had been a squatter, nothing more. Sam presented his evidence, the original deed, the letters, the records of 30 years of work and improvement. His voice was steady, but Clara could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the edge of the witness stand. It wasn't enough. She could see it in the judge's face, in Crenshaw's satisfied smile. They were going to lose. And then the door at the back of the courtroom opened. Clara turned, expecting nothing. What she saw made her heart stop. Martha Hollis. The woman who ran the general store in town stood in the doorway. Behind her were at least a dozen people, ranchers, farmers, shop owners, people Clara had seen working on the barn, people she'd met at church, people she barely knew. Martha walked down the aisle, her boots clicking against the wooden floor. "Your Honor," she said, "I'd like to present testimony on behalf of the Thornton family." Judge Harrison frowned. "This is highly irregular." "So is railroading a good man out of his home." Martha didn't flinch. "I've known Samuel Thornton for 15 years. His father before him. The Thorntons have been part of this community since before there was a community. They've helped their neighbors through droughts and fires and hard winters. They've given more to this territory than they've ever taken." Crenshaw stood up. "Your Honor, this is—" "Sit down." Martha's voice cracked like a whip. "I'm not finished." She turned back to the judge. "Every person in this room knows what's happening here. Silas Crenshaw wants that land, and he's willing to lie, cheat, and burn to get it. We all know it. The question is whether this court is going to help him do it." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. "Order, order." Martha wasn't done. "I have here signed statements from 23 residents of this territory, all testifying to the Thornton family's rightful ownership of that land. I have records from the Territorial Land Office showing that no claim was ever filed by any company before Samuel Thornton's father staked his homestead." She slapped a stack of papers onto the judge's bench. "And I have witnesses who will swear under oath that they saw Silas Crenshaw's men setting fire to the Thornton barn 3 weeks ago." The courtroom went silent. Crenshaw's face had gone pale. His lawyers were whispering frantically. Judge Harrison looked at the papers, then at Martha, then at Crenshaw. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the judge cleared his throat. "In light of this new evidence," he said slowly, "I am dismissing the claim against the Thornton property. Mr. Crenshaw, I suggest you and your associates leave this territory before I find reason to press charges." The courtroom exploded. Clara felt Sam's arms around her, lifting her off her feet. The children were shouting, crying, laughing all at once. Neighbors were shaking Sam's hand, slapping his back, embracing Clara like she was one of their own. Because she was. She was one of them now. Through the chaos, Clara caught Martha's eye. The older woman smiled and tipped an imaginary hat. "Thank you," Clara mouthed. Martha shrugged. "That's what neighbors are for." Outside the courthouse, Eugenia Crawford was waiting. Clara saw her standing by the carriage, her face twisted with fury. Violet was nowhere to be seen. For a moment their eyes met. Eugenia opened her mouth to speak some final threat, some parting cruelty. Clara didn't give her the chance. She walked past her without a word, without a glance, without acknowledging her existence at all. Because Eugenia Crawford didn't matter anymore. Nothing she had said or done or threatened mattered. Clara had a family now, a home, a future, and no one was going to take that away from her. That night, the Thornton Ranch was filled with celebration. Neighbors came and went, bringing food and drink and laughter. The children ran wild high on sugar and excitement. Even Tommy cracked a smile, though he tried to hide it. Late in the evening, when the guests had finally gone and the children had collapsed into bed, Sam found Clara in the garden. She was standing among Eliza's wildflowers, looking up at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" Sam asked. Clara smiled. "About how strange life is. A month ago, I was being sold in a town square. Now I'm here." Sam stood beside her. "Any regrets?" "Not one." She turned to face him. "You. Just one." Sam's voice was soft. "That I didn't find you sooner." Clara's heart swelled. "Sam. I love you, Clara." The words hung in the air between them, simple and true. "I know it's too soon," Sam continued. "I know we've only known each other a few weeks, but I've spent 3 years alone wondering if I'd ever feel this way again. And now that I do, I don't want to waste any more time." Clara reached up and touched his face. "I love you too." Sam's smile lit up the darkness. "Then stay," he said. "Not as a housekeeper, not as a helper, as my wife." Clara's breath caught. "Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to be part of this family, officially, permanently." Sam took her hands in his. "I'm asking you to let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." Clara didn't have to think about her answer. "Yes," she said. "Yes." Sam pulled her into his arms and kissed her under the stars, surrounded by wildflowers and the scent of the earth. And somewhere Clara was certain Eliza Thornton was smiling. The wedding was simple. No church, no fancy dress, no guests from distant cities. Just the Thornton family. A handful of neighbors and a preacher who rode 3 hours to perform the ceremony, because Sam had once helped him fix a broken wagon wheel in the middle of a thunderstorm. Clara wore Eliza's wedding dress. It had been Abigail's idea. She had appeared in Clara's doorway the morning of the wedding, holding the folded white fabric in her arms like something sacred. "Pa kept it," Abigail said, "in a trunk in the attic. I don't think he even knows I found it." Clara touched the lace collar, the delicate pearl buttons, the soft cotton that had yellowed slightly with age. "I can't wear this." "Why not?" "Because it belonged to your mother." Abigail shook her head. "It belonged to a woman who loved my father, a woman who made this family what it is." She pressed the dress into Clara's hands. "You're that woman now. You've earned the right to wear it." Clara's eyes burned with tears. "Abigail, please." Abigail's voice cracked. "Mama would have wanted you to have it. I know she would." Clara looked at the dress for a long moment. Then she pulled Abigail into her arms and held her tight. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for letting me be part of this family." Abigail hugged her back. "You already were." The ceremony took place in the garden among Eliza's wildflowers, with the mountains rising blue and eternal in the distance. Grace scattered petals down the aisle. Ruth read a passage from the Bible in her clear, steady voice. Tommy stood beside his father as best man, trying hard to look serious and mostly succeeding. Lily held Clara's hand during the vows, her small fingers warm and trusting. And when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Sam kissed Clara with such tenderness that she felt something inside her break open, all the walls she'd built, all the defenses she'd constructed, crumbling away like they'd never existed at all. She was home. Finally, truly home. The first year passed like a dream. Spring brought wildflowers and new calves, and the sound of children laughing as they chased each other through the tall grass. Summer brought long days of work, and longer evenings on the porch watching the sun sink behind the mountains, while fireflies blinked in the darkness. Fall brought the harvest, the whole family working side by side to bring in the crops. Their hands calloused and their backs aching, but their hearts full. Winter brought snow and cold, and nights huddled around the fire telling stories and sharing memories and building something new from the pieces of something old. Clara learned the rhythms of the ranch. She learned which horse was gentle enough for Lily to pet, and which one would bite if you turned your back. She learned how to predict a storm by the way the chickens behaved, and how to tell a good melon from a bad one, by the sound it made when you tapped it. She learned that Tommy talked more when he was working with his hands, and that Ruth needed quiet time after dinner to process everything she'd observed during the day. She learned that Sam still visited Eliza's grave every Sunday morning, rain or shine, and that he always came back with red-rimmed eyes and a peaceful expression. She never asked what he said to her. She didn't need to. And she learned slowly and painfully and beautifully what it meant to be loved. Not the desperate, grasping love she'd tried to earn from Henry. Not the conditional, performance-based love her parents had withheld. But real love. Steady love. The kind that showed up every day in small ways and large without keeping score. Sam brought her coffee every morning before she woke. He rubbed her feet at night when she'd been standing too long. He listened when she talked and gave her space when she needed silence. He never raised his voice, never raised his hand, never made her feel small or stupid or worthless. He made her feel like she mattered, like she had always mattered, and the world had just been too blind to see it. The children grew. Abigail turned 15, then 16, then 17. She grew taller, more confident, more beautiful. Boys from neighboring ranches started finding excuses to ride by, and Sam grumbled about it constantly, which made Clara laugh and Abigail roll her eyes. "Pa, I'm not interested in any of them," Abigail would say. "Good. Keep it that way until you're 30. Pa. 40. Pa." But Clara saw the way Abigail looked at the Peterson boy, the one with the shy smile and the gift for gentling wild horses. She saw the way they found reasons to stand close to each other at church socials, the way their hands almost but not quite touched when they thought no one was watching. She didn't say anything. Some things a mother had to let unfold on their own. Tommy grew into a young man broad-shouldered and serious with his father's quiet strength and his mother's kind eyes. He took over more and more of the ranch work, and Sam started talking about building a second house on the property, something Tommy could have when he was ready to start a family of his own. "Not that I'm pushing," Sam would say. "You've got time." "I know, Pa. Plenty of time." "I know. I just want you to be happy." Tommy would look at his father with an expression that was half exasperation, half love. "I am happy, Pa. I've got everything I need right here." Ruth discovered that she wanted to be a teacher. She devoured every book she could find, wrote letters to schools in Denver and San Francisco, planned a future that extended far beyond the boundaries of the ranch. "You'll come back, won't you?" Grace asked her once. "After you're done learning." Ruth smiled. "I'll always come back. This is home." Grace grew from a crying, emotional child into a crying, emotional young woman, but her tears were as often from joy as from sorrow now, and her laughter came easier and more often. She developed a talent for baking that put Clara's efforts to shame, and she started selling pies and cakes to the neighbors, saving the money in a jar she kept hidden under her bed. "What are you saving for?" Clara asked once. Grace blushed. "A wedding dress, for someday. Do you have someone in mind?" "Maybe." Grace's blush deepened. "Maybe not. I just want to be ready." Clara hugged her and didn't push further. And Lily, little Lily, who had been silent for 3 years, became the most talkative child in the family. She chattered constantly about everything to everyone. She talked to the chickens and the horses and the wildflowers in the garden. She talked to Eliza's grave, telling her mother about everything that happened and asking questions she would never hear the answers to. She talked to Clara most of all. "Mama, Clara." She would say she had started calling her that on her own without prompting about 6 months after the wedding. "Tell me the story again, the one about how you met Pa." And Clara would tell it, every time, because some stories needed to be repeated. The years turned. 5 years, then 10, then 15. Clara's hair grew streaked with gray. Her hands, already roughened from years of work, became gnarled and spotted with age. The face she saw in the mirror each morning was lined with decades of smiles and tears of laughter and worry of love, given and received. She had never felt more beautiful. Sam aged beside her, his hair going silver, his step slowing, but his eyes never losing that light she had fallen in love with so long ago. They grew old together, the way she had never dared to dream she would grow old with anyone. They watched their children marry. Abigail wed the Peterson boy, now a man with a ranch of his own, in a ceremony that made Sam cry and pretend he wasn't crying. Tommy married a quiet, steady woman from the next county who looked at him like he'd hung the moon. Ruth came back from teaching school in Denver with a husband no one had expected, a professor of literature who quoted poetry and made her laugh. Grace married her childhood sweetheart, a boy she'd known since they were both learning to walk. And Lily, wild, talkative, Lily, fell in love with a traveling preacher who adored her beyond reason. They watched grandchildren arrive one by one until the ranch overflowed with small voices and running feet. Clara held each new baby with wonder, marveling at the life she had somehow been allowed to help create. Not from her own body. She had made peace with that long ago. But from her heart, from her choices, from the love she had given without expectation and received beyond her wildest hopes. This was her family. Not by blood, by something stronger, by choice. On a quiet evening in the autumn of their 20th year together, Sam and Clara sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. The air was cool, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant smoke. Inside the house was quiet, the children grown and gone to their own homes, the grandchildren visiting on Sundays now instead of living underfoot. Sam reached over and took Clara's hand. "Do you remember the day we met?" he asked. Clara smiled. "How could I forget? You paid $50 for a woman no one else wanted." $50 was a bargain. Sam squeezed her fingers. "I would have paid 1,000. You didn't have 1,000. I would have found it." He turned to look at her, his eyes soft. "You were worth every penny, then and now." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was so scared that day. I thought you were just another man who would hurt me. And now I know you're the best thing that ever happened to me." They sat in silence for a while, watching the colors bleed across the sky. "I've been thinking," Sam said eventually, about what happens next, after we're gone." Clara's chest tightened. "Sam, I'm not being morbid. I'm being practical." He shifted to face her more fully. "I want to leave something behind, something that says we were here, that we mattered. The ranch, more than the ranch. I want—" He stopped, searching for words. "I want people to know. About you. About what you did for this family. About the woman who came to us broken and made us whole." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't the one who made anyone whole. You did that. The children did that." "No." Sam's voice was firm. "You did. You walked into our lives when we were drowning and you pulled us to shore. One by one, day by day. You never gave up on us, even when we gave you every reason to." "I couldn't give up." Clara wiped her eyes. "You were mine. All of you. From the first moment I held Lily's doll, you were mine." Sam pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "I want to put up a sign," he said, "at the edge of the property, something travelers can see as they pass." "What kind of sign?" Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Something about love, about what it means to choose someone, to keep choosing them every day for the rest of your life? Clara thought about it, about all the years, all the struggles, all the moments of doubt and fear and overwhelming joy. "How about this?" she said softly. "Not for sale, because sometimes love means standing firm when the world tries to knock you down." Sam smiled. "That's perfect." They carved the sign together, working side by side the way they had done everything for 20 years. Sam cut the wood. Clara sanded the edges. They both helped to burn the letters into the grain, taking turns with the heated iron. Not for sale. Because sometimes love means standing firm. They mounted it at the edge of the property where the road curved toward town, where travelers could see it as they passed, where it would stand as a testament to everything they had built, everything they had survived, everything they had become. That night, Clara dreamed of wildflowers. She dreamed of children laughing and horses running and the smell of bread baking in a kitchen full of love. She dreamed of Sam's arms around her, steady and strong. She dreamed of Eliza standing in the garden, smiling at her with gratitude and blessing. She dreamed of herself, not the broken woman who had been sold in a town square, but the woman she had become. A mother, a wife, a survivor, a force. When she woke, the sun was streaming through the window, and Sam was already up making coffee the way she had taught him all those years ago. "Good morning, beautiful," he said. "Good morning yourself." She rose and crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist, pressing her face against his back. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." He turned in her arms and kissed her. Every day. For the rest of forever. They stood there in the kitchen, two old people holding each other in the morning light, and Clara felt something she had never felt before. Complete. Utterly, perfectly, completely whole. Clara Thornton died on a spring morning 23 years after a stranger paid $50 to save her life. She went peacefully in her sleep with Sam's hand in hers, and the wildflowers blooming outside her window. The children came from miles around, Abigail and Tommy and Ruth and Grace and Lily, with their husbands and wives and children and grandchildren, filling the old ranch house with tears and laughter and stories about the woman who had changed everything. They buried her in the garden next to Eliza, beneath a stone that bore a simple inscription: "She gave life to everything she touched." Sam carved a second sign and placed it above her grave. It read, "Here rests a woman who was sold for $50 and proved herself priceless." He visited her every day after that the way he had visited Eliza. He talked to her about the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, who arrived one by one. He talked to her about the ranch, the weather, the price of cattle. He talked to her about nothing and everything, the way they had always talked. And sometimes, when the wind was right and the wildflowers swayed, just so he could almost hear her answer. Sam Thornton died 3 years later on another spring morning with a smile on his face and Clara's name on his lips. They buried him between the two women he had loved, and the children planted more wildflowers until the whole hillside blazed with color. The ranch passed to Tommy, who passed it to his children, who passed it to theirs. The house was expanded and modernized, the barn rebuilt twice more, the fences moved and moved again as the property grew. But some things stayed the same. The wildflowers still bloomed every spring, covering the hillside in purple and gold and white. The sign at the edge of the property still stood weathered but legible, "Not for sale." Because sometimes love means standing firm. And every Sunday morning, someone from the family walked up the hill to the little cemetery and left fresh flowers on 3 graves: Eliza, Clara, and Sam. 3 people who had loved each other in ways the world didn't always understand. 3 people who had built something beautiful from the wreckage of their pain. Travelers still passed the ranch sometimes. They slowed their cars. It was cars now instead of wagons, and read the old sign by the road. Some of them wondered what it meant. Some of them nodded like they understood. But only the Thornton family knew the real story. The story of a woman sold for $50 who became the heart of a family. The story of a man who saw past damage and found treasure. The story of 5 children who learned that love isn't about blood or birth. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard. And the story of a house that became a home, not because of what it was built with, but because of who chose to stay. The wildflowers still grow on that hillside. The sign still stands. And somewhere in the wind that blows through the tall grass and rustles the leaves of the old oak tree, 2 voices can be heard whispering the same thing they've been saying for over 100 years. Together, forever, home. Because in the end, Clara Louise Whitmore Thornton was never barren at all. She was full to overflowing with love and courage and an infinite capacity for hope. She didn't give birth to her children. She gave them something rarer and more precious. She gave them herself. And that was more than enough. That was everything.